Grizzlies fans, it is time for another Game Day update. Today, the Grizzlies will take on the Timberwolves for the third time this season. They are in Minnesota. So joining me is Jon Krawczynski to break this one down. Hello, sir. Welcome back.
Hey, KJ, how's it going?
It's going all right.
It's going all right. Yes.
The Grizzlies on the longest losing streak of the season for them, looking to wrap up the longest road trip of the season in Minnesota tonight. To end Rivals Week as well, of course, budding rivalry. The Timberwolves have won 3 of their last 4. They're coming off a win over the Pelicans, where Anthony Edwards had 37 points in 37 minutes. Super efficient. I want to talk about Anthony Edwards because he is kind of the head of the dragon for the Timberwolves. In the first 2 games that they played the Grizzlies, I think he had 28 points and 29 points. So, I mean, we're expecting a big game from him tonight, right? It's not about stopping him. It's one of those guys who you're just trying to make their life a little more difficult.
Yeah, it seemed that way for Anthony Edwards, especially the last really 6 to 8 weeks, KJ. He's ever since Karl-Anthony Towns went out with his calf injury, Anthony Edwards has had his role increased. He is now kind of on the ball a lot more and essentially initiating the offense. And he's really just taking control of this team. He is the emotional heartbeat of the team. He is also obviously the most gifted offensive player on the team. And really, I think it's been 5 games in a row now of at least 30 points. He is playing efficiently. He's playing with force. And he's really trying to make an all-star game push. And you can just see the confidence growing in him. And you also see that his teammates really respond well to him and want him to lead the way. So it's been a nice 3rd-year leap now for Anthony Edwards that we've seen really since the start of December.
Yeah, well, he has my all-star vote, if that means anything. I love watching Anthony Edwards. I would love to have him in the dunk contest. I would love just everything around that. So you mentioned Cat being out. And I think what was interesting is playing this team, it was like, okay, they have Cat and Rudy, 2 big guys that they're going to go with. And then the Grizzlies are like, okay, like when we get JJ back, we'll have JJ and Steven. But now Steven is out as well. How does that fare with the at least matchup of the bigs now for the Grizzlies? Because now it's just Rudy and JJ.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I do think that Karl-Anthony Towns was one of those players who was a tough matchup for Memphis in the past. And Steven Adams was often had to play off the court, and the Grizzlies would go a little smaller to combat sort of the way that the Timberwolves would throw things at them. But now with both Cat and Adams out of the lineup, you kind of take that chess piece off the board. And so Rudy Gobert is going to have to chase Jaren Jackson around a little bit more, right? Jaren can shoot the 3 a little bit. He's really athletic. He can really move. And it's kind of going to be a fun matchup because you have this Rudy Gobert, the best defensive big of his generation, really 3-time defensive player of the year. And now you have Jaren Jackson, who's coming for that throne. I mean, he's been unbelievable defensively this year. And so I would imagine that he has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder going into this matchup. So to watch the 2 of them and how they go at each other, I'm really looking forward to that matchup individually tonight.
Now, Jon, I was looking at the box scores of the first 2 games, and I don't know if I just don't remember or if something happened to Rudy, but he had 1 rebound in the win. What? Am I losing my mind, or like what happened?
No, you're not losing your mind. It especially earlier on in the season, which is when that matchup came, the Timberwolves had a lot of trouble figuring out how to fit Rudy Gobert into the equation. And Rudy Gobert, I think, had a lot of trouble understanding how to play with the new teammates that he had. And so there was a real adjustment period where there would be games where he would get 1 shot. There would be games where he'd only grab 3 or 4 rebounds. And I think that he has been better about that really in the last 4 or 5 weeks, where he's starting to play more up to his expectations. But it's still been a bit of a headache to try and really get him incorporated. And so far, for all that they paid for Rudy Gobert, it's definitely been underwhelming returns. But really, the last 5 or 6 starts that he's had, he's started to uptick, and we'll see if he can follow that up again tonight.
Yeah, and we're talking offensively for these big guys, but I mean, Anthony Edwards and Ja are also guys who get to the paint, and I want to talk about points in the paint. Both these teams are top 10 in points in the paint and percentage of points in the paint. The first game where the Grizzlies won, they outscored in the paint 62-46, like major. And then the second time, the Wolves were like, we're good at this too. And then they outscored the Grizzlies in the paint, and they eventually won that game. Is that kind of the key to tonight's game?
It feels like that's the recipe for sure, because both teams, I think, really don't rely on the 3-point shot as much as a lot of teams out there do. I know that the Grizzlies have Desmond Bane and Dillon Brooks can get going from there. Jaws hit it a little bit, but in general, I think they're a lower volume 3-point shooting team. And that's the same with the Wolves. Since Malik Beasley left last year, they have really shot a lower percentage of their shots from 3-point range. And so they really do try to get into the paint, score there. It's a lob to Rudy. It's Ant going downhill and getting to the rim. Even D'Angelo Russell with the little mid-range pull-ups. That's kind of more of their diet of offense and generating offense. And really, the Wolves do want to get out in transition a little bit. I think the Grizzlies do too. And you score a lot in the paint and in transition. And so I do think that this is more of a throwback matchup where it's not whoever makes the most threes is going to win the game. It's who can really impose their will physically down at the rim.
Old school. I like it. We talked a lot about a whole different amount of guys. You brought up Desmond Bane. You brought up D'Angelo Russell, who had 10 assists in the last game against the Grizzlies. Give me one matchup that you are just excited to watch between these two teams.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to sound obvious, but Dillon Brooks against Anthony Edwards is going to be fun because
that's like a bulldog matchup.
Absolutely, because Dillon Brooks loves to talk trash, and when you talk trash to Anthony Edwards, that typically does not go well. Ant really responds to that, and it's a Friday night. This is a real rivalry now. Like, Timberwolves fans do not like the Grizzlies, and I think vice versa. And so I think there's going to be a lot of energy in the arena. And so to see those two who are very emotional, who get after it, I am anticipating kind of in playoff-like intensity. And so I really can't wait to see those two really butt heads and see what happens there.
I like that one. I like that one a lot, because that's one, like Dillon, like you said, like he loves playing defense on really good guys. And Anthony Edwards is one of those really good guys. And they're both like big, like, it's going to be a fun one. That's a great matchup to watch. The game tips off at 6:30 tonight, Central Time. So if you're watching, tune into that. That one's on Bally Sports Southeast and the Bally Sports Plus app. Thank you so much for your time today. Are you going to the game?
I will be there, KJ. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, let us know how the energy is at the end of that one, because it's going to be good. Thank you again.
Will do. Great seeing you.
You as well.